Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Marvel's Secret Invasion Episode 6, the finale, Home. And why pick one Avenger to fight as when you can be all of them? There's actually a lot of interesting Marvel Easter eggs in this episode, a lot of cool details that you might have missed, so I'm gonna break it all down. Our review of the finale and the full season is on the Break Room channel. And be warned, we do get pretty honest in that conversation. But you should definitely subscribe to the Break Room and subscribe to the Deep Dive channel, and you can support us with a Skrull-inspired shirt at nerdriot.shop. Also, SAG-AFTRA has informed us that entertainment journalist outlets like New Rockstars are okay to cover movies and TV. This is not a paid promotion. My goal with this video will be to celebrate the craftsmanship of all the talented artists who worked on this title, because whatever you thought about this episode, there is a lot to appreciate here. Okay, as in past episodes, we open with a truncated version of the Marvel Studios title card where the word secret from Bruce Banner's line in the 2012 Avengers movie pops out, but now all of these Avengers come under a different context because they now represent the blood in the mix, the red in the ledger of the Skrulls in their Avengers Harvest cocktail that we see glugged this episode. We open on Priscilla walking through her ruined house after the shootout last episode where it looks like Grimace blew his brains out after everyone celebrated his birthday by drinking his blood. No, this is just purple Skrull blood, of course, but this episode's title is Home, and I can't imagine Varra feels comfortable in this one anymore, either the house or this planet. Nick Fury, or we think this is Nick Fury, because it turns out we were right about that fake Fury theory, at least when it comes to New Skrullos. One of the Furies calls Varra, but the faces in shadow the entire scene, making it hard for us to trust this man of mystery. We never really can be sure in this series when we were talking to Fury and when we were talking to someone else. Fury ended last episode calling someone from Finland saying, "Let's finish this," and now we have to assume that that was Gaia. The real Fury just went back to the UK, while Gaia pretended to be him flying from the UK to Russia. And somewhere in the middle there was a conversation between Fury and Gaia about what Gaia should say, and where he handed off that DNA to her. Fury says that he dialed Varra's number all these years but never pressed send. Maybe given their covert communication, they avoided traceable phone calls, and they agreed only to call this number when it might be the last time they talked to each other. So really, Fury could be saying, "I broached a few suicide missions in the past few years, but I haven't crossed that line until now." And that could be why Varra now says,
"You don't have to if you don't want to, darling."
Now, Fury doesn't indicate where he is exactly here, I suppose to keep the audience in doubt as to whether he's in Russia or in the UK, but Varra says that he seems far away, which I think is her way of saying that she still feels some distance with him. Meanwhile, Fury uses an empty car to ambush the Skrull guards at New Skrullos. This looks like a different gate than what we saw when Beto joined the group in episode 1, so maybe Fury is trying to sneak in a back way. If Gravik wanted Fury to bring the harvest and to chat with him for a bit, I don't know why he would let armed guards shoot at the car, but either way, since we know that this is Gaia actually, we have to assume that she knows that she's under Gravik's surveillance, which is why she approaches as Fury. Seriously, the Oscar goes to Gaia this episode for all the convincing, staggering, and coughing, and zigzagging, as if radiation is actually affecting her when it's not, because she's a Skrull. Also, her remorselessness double tapping the guard after he had already reverted to Skrull form in his death. In President Ritson's hospital room, Colonel Rhodes, aka Rava, makes her case to bomb Russian soil, while the Joint Chief Chairman, her insignia is that of the US Navy Rear Admiral. This actress is Lucy Newman-Williams. She advises caution, and we learn the name of the MCU's Russian leader, President Vladimir. This Rear Admiral says,
"We cannot rule out the possibility of a false flag attack."
Did you take a stupid pill with your breakfast this morning, Admiral?
oh my god, Avenger or not, no way would Colonel Rhodes talk to the Joint Chiefs this way. Rude Rava making Rhodey look like a real jackass these episodes. Scrody mentions having 30 dead Russians to prove it, making me wonder if the Skrulls in the motorcade attack who died reverted to Skrulls, who would these 30 dead Russians be? I think Rhodey's just straight up lying here. An aide brings in real-time satellite images of the Russians arming the Ukraine and Finland borders. Well, Russia in our world already blew past that Ukrainian border, so that's kind of awkward. But an armed Finland border would further explain why it's not the real Fury in Russia, because he just came from Finland. Also, Rhodey wrote a speech for the president? Someone in Rhodey's position would never do that. Remarks are always written by the communication director, speechwriters, maybe with consultation from the press secretary of the chief of staff, but not like a national security advisor or whatever position Rhodey's in. Does Ritson have literally no other advisors? And did no one in this room watch The West Wing? So Gaia/Fury approaches the new Skrullos base. The dead Skrull on the ground, remember, is poor Beto. Dashiell, whom Gravik killed after they tried to overthrow him. So Gaia's really doing her best not to react to seeing this scroll that she recruited, now revealed as executed. Inside the cafeteria, she sees Xerxu and all the other dead scroll mutineers. Gaia/Fury uses a radiation counter, which now in retrospect really just seems like a prop that Gaia uses to know how sick to pretend to be, because right after reading the scanner, notice how she really starts to ham up the coughing and the limping. So in the hospital, Sonya calls Ravarodi to move the president because Fury's on his way, she says. Really, this is a ploy to keep Ritson in play and ideally separate him from Rava, but I like that Sonya doesn't actually lie here. The real Fury is on his way. Secret Service agents get darted and quickly dragged into rooms out of view. We don't really see who's doing it, but presumably it's Fury and Sonya working together because, you know, those agents are probably heavy dudes. Gaia/Fury makes her way to the Super Scroll machine room. It makes sense that she would know her way since she's been there before. And just more great performance art from Gaia, like she fumbles the iodine pills to make Fury look especially weak to Gravik. And those pills, they're the color green. You know they are. Gravik asks Fury,
what about that invisible cloak and shield?
I assume he's referring to the Widow's Veil that we saw Fury use last episode, but could there be some full body armor or shielding that Fury has used in the past? Is that what the full body Widow's Veil prototype that he was talking about last episode? Gaia/Fury says,
"You too busy playing dress up." Using my skin like a costume.
It's a pretty interesting thing for Gaia to say under the guise of Nick Fury. Like, at first I appreciated the line because it seemed like Fury was calling out Gravik for using a kind of blackface. But now we learn it's Gaia doing it while she's really doing the same thing, pretending to be Nick Fury. And Gravik confirms,
this was the first human I killed. I killed him because you told me to. You don't even remember.
Yeah, I think Gaia is learning this for the first time based off of her reaction, both about Gravik wearing the first victim's face and Fury using scrolls to murder humans. Gravik implies that this human was a bit misguided, maybe he was suggesting he was a member of Hydra or some kind of terroristic organization. And Gravik rages, telling who he thinks is Fury,
You look at me! Look at me!
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear a supervillain say that, not think of Heath Ledger's The Joker.
Look at me! Look at me!
Gravik goes on,
all the bombs and the blackouts and the massacres and the wildfires and the imminent removal of humans from their habitat, that is all you!
And the sad thing about this is, we don't know if Gravik is referring to thermonuclear war that might be on the horizon or what humanity is already going through. Then Gaia begins taking some real liberties, monologuing as Fury, saying that it's easier to save the lives of 8 billion people than changing their hearts and minds, and saying that when the blip happened, right before Fury flaked off, he felt relief. Really, Gaia is just speculating. She's trying to present the weakest version of Fury, a Fury that Gravik will be the most likely to pick a fight with, but this should be a tell for us, because we all saw the Infinity War post-credit scene. Fury was not feeling relief there. His final word was, motherfucker. And so Gaia/Fury presents the vial.
Carol Danvers' DNA, along with the Avengers that you and your team collected.
Now, we'll talk more about this in a second, but I just can't get past how all these DNA samples are just loosed together in one vial without cross-contamination or total non-viability, unless they were reconstructed into one super DNA strand. Either way, keep these things separate. That's why Dennis Nedry had that Barbasol can. In the midst of all this is a brief shot of US military personnel being handed classified documents, which I assume is the president's order to fire up an ICBM. But if you look closely at the receiving officer, his name is Richards. Maybe some relation to Reed Richards or Nathaniel Richards? Or maybe I'm reaching. So Gravik analyzes the DNA sample, and on his screen flash several big names from the MCU. We see Ghost, referring to Ava Starr, the phase-shifting villain from Ant-Man and the Wasp, returning in Thunderbolts. Captain America, presumably Steve Rogers, though Sam Wilson is technically Captain America right now. Corvus Glaive, that was the head of Thanos' Black Order, the one with the glaive. Thanos himself. An Outrider, that's one of Thanos' foot soldiers. Proxima Midnight, that was a female member of the Black Order. Captain Marvel. Then Abomination, Emil Blonsky, most recently seen in She-Hulk. Mantis, Cull Obsidian, Drax, Korg, Ebony Maw, that was the telekinetic priest of the Black Order, Frost Beast, Hulk, Chitauri, remember those were Loki's foot soldiers in the 2012 Avengers, Valkyrie, the Asgardian soldier and a current ruler of New Asgard, Thor Odinson, they used his first and his last name, Gamora, Flora Colossus, that's Groot species, and Winter Soldier. Now, while it doesn't show up in large text, you can see over on the side column, also Black Panther. I don't know where during the Battle of Earth that T'Challa would have bled, like that vibranium suit seems pretty tightly woven. I'm a little iffy about anyone having T'Challa's blood. Like, I don't even trust the Kevin robot to do the right thing with that. But if if some mystical qualities like Ebony Maw's telekinesis get transferred over, it could also be that the powers of the heart-shaped herb stay in the blood as well. Like I would wonder what Gravik saw in the ancestral plane when he died. Probably some Wakandan ancestor saying, "You aren't Wakandan, get the fuck out, Green Bean." But if the harvest was a mission to acquire blood from the aftermath of the Avengers Endgame final battle, would this mean that Ghost and Abomination were present for that? I'm not so sure. I think they were just previously part of Fury's DNA registry, and he just lumped in everything he had in this vial. I also have to question why the Skrulls list these individual superhero monikers and not their more commonly known MCU names, to be more specific about it. Like for example, they write Captain America instead of Steve Rogers, when technically in the MCU currently Captain America is Sam Wilson. They also write Winter Soldier instead of James Buchanan Barnes, when there were actually multiple Winter Soldiers at some point. Thor Odinson was specified, since the status of Thor can move on from individuals like Jane Foster and Beta Ray Bill. It's just inconsistent, but really I think the goal is maximum hype for the most recognizable names in the MCU and a final episode showdown that would cycle through as many MCU power sets as possible. And in that regard, this episode doesn't disappoint, other than I think it leaves Gaia way too powerful, but we'll talk about that later. And thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Here at New Rockstars, we like to figure out what makes movies work, go frame by frame to figure out what's really going on. But when we need insight on what's really going on with ourselves, we use BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, just answer a few questions about what you're looking for from therapy and what your preferences are. BetterHelp will then match you with a therapist from their network that's right for you. After that, talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. BetterHelp gives you the same level of professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at a more affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/newrockstars. That's BETTERHELP.com/newrockstars for 10% off your first month of therapy. So let's talk about everything that we see here. Gravik fires up the Super Skrull machine, which glows his shirt off, I guess, but his default mode here is Hulk jacked. His chin is actually noticeably more ridged now than it usually is, giving him more of the appearance of Thanos. Meanwhile, Gaia Furies catches Gravik's punch, and with her other hand, if you take it frame by frame, she retracts the Skrull clothes to expose her bare arm, and then turns that arm into a Hulk arm to punch Gravik into a nearby smokestack. So she turns back into her human Gaia form, and Gravik's right arm has turned Groot. Meanwhile, it's confirmed that the real Fury was at Britson's hospital. So Gaia and Gravik each activate their extremist fire healing. Gravik turns his non-Groot arm into an Abomination arm. You can tell from the texturing and the fact that his ears turn into the Abomination fins that we've seen on the redesigns in Shang-Chi. Gaia turns her arm into Drax's arm. You can tell from the tattooing that Dave Bautista would have on his arm. But man, I gotta say, the VFX just looks kind of uncanny valley here, because Emilia Clarke's head is just way too big for this to be Dave Bautista's arm. It kind of looks like a baby Batista arm, but it's still muscular, so it's just unsettling. So Gravik throws the car at her, but Gaia uses Ghost's phase-shifting powers to phase through it. It's just pretty clever to see how Gaia thinks differently than just how strong can she be. Next, Gravik turns his Abomination arm into the rocky Cronin flesh of Korg. So now he's got wood and rock, which anyone who's played Settlers of Catan knows these resources never go together to build anything. So Gaia forms an ice sword, which I suppose is the power of a frost beast, and she takes on a Korg arm too, and she stabs him through the chest with the ice pick. Gravik then turns an arm into Ebony Maw, allowing him to telekinetically levitate rubble, just like Maw did against Doctor Strange in Infinity War. So I guess telekinesis lives in Ebony Maw's DNA. But I think the absolutely silliest image of this fight is a brief shot of Gaia falling right in front of Gravik, and Gravik uses a big Hulk foot to kick her, just like Hulk did to Emil Blonsky in the 2008 Incredible Hulk film. But I guess part of the shapeshifting, if you look closely, is Hulk's tattered purple shorts. Then Gaia takes on a Cull Obsidian arm, while Gravik runs at her with a Cull Obsidian arm as well, and just a jacked purple Thanos arm. They both activate their Carol Danvers powers, and they fly into the sky, but Gaia recognizes Brawn versus Brawn ain't working, so she activates Mantis's powers, growing Mantis's antennae and putting Gravik to sleep, just like Mantis did to Thanos in Infinity War. So between Ghost powers and Mantis powers, Gaia just seems to get the more evasive and empathic skills that Gravik doesn't think to use. In Pokemon terms, he is all Hydro Pump, Flamethrower, Solar Beam, and Thunderbolt, and not enough Agility or Sleep Powder. Gaia's final charge at Gravik uses another subtle Ghost phase shift, and then she uses the Cull Obsidian arm to restrain a weakened Gravik, and she uses some Carol Danvers cosmic energy to blast a hole in his stomach. I love the detail that in his lifeless eyes, you can see Gaia's glowing body reflected, the last thing he sees while he's alive. Meanwhile, back at the hospital standoff, Rava Rhodey goes for Sonya's gun, which is a big mistake because you just totally outed yourself, and Fury plugs Rava in the head, his purple blood making it immediately clear to Ritson who was right here. So back on the Skrull base, Gaia frees the human prisoners, including Rosa Dalton, the art dealer from episode 1, the female Skrull operative who had been following Gravik since Pagan was killed, and James Rhodes, the real Rhodey. Notice how Rhodey is wearing a hospital gown, and he seems to need help walking. The real Everett Ross is also awakened, and he asks Rhodey how long he's been here. I think the implication based on the hospital gown is that he was taken shortly after surgery during the events of Captain America's Civil War. Yikes. I mean, this is a huge deal, folks. It would mean that Rhodey doesn't know Tony Stark is dead, he doesn't know about Thanos or the blip or anything that happened during Infinity War or Endgame. It would mean the Rhodey who shrugged off the government leaders in Infinity War, who fought the Outriders in Wakanda, who was there in the immediate aftermath of the blip, who conference called the Avengers in Endgame looking for Clint Barton, who proposed choking Thanos as a baby, who backhanded Peter Quill during the time heist on Morag, who fought in the Battle of Earth, and who cried at Tony Stark's side when he died. All of that was not Rhodey, but a Skrull named Rava. And would also mean that Rhodey has been here for nearly 9 years, which is a lot of exposure to radiation. I'm sure we'll all talk about the impact of this decision by Marvel Studios if that is indeed the case in upcoming videos on the channel. But also notice freed here is the human UK Prime Minister Pam Lawton and the human form that Pagan took. Now, I'm not sure what happens to the Skrull form of Lawton. Presumably she slips back into the shadows. So President Ritson changes into a suit and makes a televised address from his hospital room about the motorcade attack.
That is why tonight I'm presenting to Congress for immediate emergency authorization a bill that designates all off-world born species enemy combatants.
Yikes! All off-world born species? What would that mean for the people of New Asgard, with whom Ritson signed a trade agreement as recently as Black Panther Wakanda Forever, according to that news ticker in that film? Would the Asgardians have to register with the US government, or are they automatically at war with us? Those goats are gonna shit all over the Pentagon. Off-world species would also include all friendly Skrulls, any Kree, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Eternals, or giant Celestials who pop by for a visit. This could be why trailer footage for the Marvels shows Nick Fury with a variety of humanoid races in Earth's orbit on the Saber space station, maybe providing a bit of refuge from Ritson's war. Ritson looks passive and reactive in the speech, leaning back away from the camera, when ideally you'd want to lean forward and make the speech from maybe the Oval Office or the East Room of the White House. Like if you just took a hit, you don't sit in your sickbed, leaning back and declare to the world, everyone's my enemy and I'm gonna kill them all. It's just not a good look. Fury returns home to find the dish where they previously kept their wedding rings now completely shattered. We could view this as a symbol, like their wedding bands remain intact, but that little covert game they used to play where they would publicly hide their marriage, the whole point of having wedding rings at all is to let people know that you're taken. That game that they play is no longer in play. So when he ends the scene by still plopping his ring in those broken shards, he's kind of inviting her to resign from that game with him and piece this marriage back together. And I don't know if this is a matter of editing or what, but Vara is back home now, and I don't really know what the point of showing her with their go bag was earlier. Was she running some errands? I actually think she was meeting with Sonya Falsworth and showing her that room filled with all the bodies of humans. Talk about that in a second. Vara asks,
Did you fall in love with me? Or the face that puts you at ease?
while Gaia's question last episode about whether Fury likes her in her own skin stung her, I can't help but wonder if there was still some validity to the question. And I really like this line because it's a question that every spouse should ask at least themselves or each other. We must love our partners in their totality and not just the aspects of them that make us feel good about ourselves. If we think a healthy relationship is constant showering of compliments and ego stroking, and anything beyond that is toxic, we're basically asking to be infantilized. Fury says,
I love you, Priscilla.
But Vara says,
Then I guess this is goodbye.
Fury says, I love you, Priscilla, and Vara says, I guess this is goodbye then. Fury doesn't pick up the hint that she wants him to call her by her Skrull name. Sonya pops out at Gaia from behind a corner like she's freaking Pennywise.
Oh, I haven't come for a fight, Gaia. With your special abilities, it would be a lopsided affair.
So Gaia's new power status presents some issues for the MCU. Carol Danvers' cosmic radiation is meant to make her the most powerful Avenger, a status that is now complicated by the cosmic entanglement of the upcoming Marvels film, when she's basically handcuffed to Monica Rambeau and Kamala Khan, swapping places with them. So if Gaia also has Carol's powers, would she also be linked with that as well? Amelia Clarke has not been announced to appear in the Marvels film. I don't think she's going to be in it. But also, if Gaia has all the powers of all the other enhanced Marvel heroes, who would ever hope to check that power? So Sonya says Gaia should step up as a new Skrull leader and that she would need resources to fight this war Ritson has launched. Notice how Gaia wears a green jacket now and seems ready to step up into a Skrull command. But the organization that she forms with Sonya could be MI13, maybe Excalibur, whatever they decide to name the group that Dane Whitman and Blade are also a part of. With Falsworth leading British intelligence, this suggests a realignment of international relations along the interests of individual nations. And under Ritson, the US is becoming increasingly isolated. This sets up a scenario in Captain America 4 War: Brave New World, where the US could be at war with several former allies like the UK. I would love to see Sonya Falsworth share a scene with Val, because I think those two actors are some of the best parts of the recent Marvel titles. So Fury calls President Ritson and scolds his hateful-ass speech. Yes, Fury implies that Ritson's unpopularity could result in a new president succeeding him, setting the stage for Harrison Ford as President Thaddeus Ross in Captain America 4. Though I gotta say, based on US history, presidents who rally the public around fears for their safety often coast a re-election, like George W. Bush in 2004 with the War on Terror, Reagan in 1984 with the renewed Cold War brinkmanship in the early 80s, Nixon in 72 after his fear-mongering over turbulence over protest movements, Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964 painting Barry Goldwater as a warmonger who would escalate the Cold War to nuclear annihilation, FDR getting re-elected in 1944 despite being on his deathbed because the US was fighting a two-front world war, Sonya and Gaia find a massive room filled with scroll pods.
This is how the enemy got so good.
Super confusing scene. It's not clear how Sonya found this location. Maybe this is where Varra was going, or really based on the dialogue, we don't know what's going on here. My interpretation is that there are far more Skrulls in hiding as humans in Earth society than previously realized, and that they are gradually been learning our ways to become experts at assimilation, sharing this knowledge in a kind of Skrull hive mind. Still though, I really do think this was part of a longer scene that was edited down after reshoots, because this moment as part of an epilogue montage just doesn't really make sense. It doesn't ask any one clear question, and it doesn't answer anything. Like, I highly doubt the scene was written this way, and I just don't know why it was featured in so many trailers other than to justify the budget to get this visual, because it does look really cool. We just don't really know what it means. I guess the question now is though, does Sonya share this Skrull human nest with Ritson? Does she attempt to broker a peaceful solution with the remaining Skrulls on Earth, using Gaia and best the CIA with a more nuanced intelligence network? We see a Godfather-style execution montage in which members of the Skrull Council are wiped out like the heads of the 5 families. A freaking firing squad guns down the news anchor Chris Stearns during a broadcast? Absolutely wild that these human militants could make it all the way past security into the studio, but maybe the studio head looked the other way and told security to stand down so that a Skrull would be executed and outed on live TV. Another assassin shoots UK Prime Minister Pam Lawton, but she doesn't revert to Skrull form because we saw the human Skrull get freed from the fracking pod earlier. So this assassin must have been working on intel that Lawton was at one point a Skrull, suggesting these vigilantes might have captured and tortured one of the members of the Skrull Council. An armed gunman getting anywhere near the UK Prime Minister is absolutely insane as well. Downing Street is heavily secured and limited to press and other political VIPs. So someone in power must have let this shooter through. Meanwhile, former member of the Skrull Council Shirley Cigar managed to fend off the assassins. Remember, she was the one that Gravik allowed to leave the council. This montage is the most violent the show has gotten, and I suppose this is what the MCU has in mind for the status quo of Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Armor Wars. So in the final scene, Varra joins Fury as he prepares to return to space.
Priscilla.
Varra.
Yeah, Varra wants Fury to see her as she is. Now, Fury reports,
Good news from Saber. The Kree said they're open to peace talks with the Skrulls.
Now, Fury would be referring to the Kree political establishment on Hala, led by the sentient AI, the Supreme Intelligence. I doubt Fury would be talking about the militant faction led by Dara Ben in the upcoming The Marvels. She wants to destroy Earth and probably Hala, and might end up toppling whatever peace talks Fury and Varra try to broker. But Varra says,
All my work is here, darling. And it's never been more important.
Yeah, what work is it referring to? There was a quick shot of a framed periodical about Priscilla Davis's genetic research, but we never really learned what Varra had been trying to do. I think she was referring to that vast basement of all those human bodies. I think that was her operation. So a blinding beam of light from the Saber transport ship mirrors the earlier shot from episode 1. This shot here initially bisects the two silhouettes of the two spouses so that they start this interaction divided by the responsibility to keep Earth and its inhabitants safe. But as Varra reverts to her Skrull appearance, Fury accepts her as she is, and they kiss, and together they board the transport, the light enveloping both of them to turn their two shadows into one combined marriage. Like Steven Spielberg's intense backlighting on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, these Earthlings and extraterrestrials have more in common than they do reasons for division. And while it's easy to feel divided in the shadows of ignorance and deception, in the light of truth, we are united as one. I want to thank Noah Chen, Eric Francisco, Gina Ippolito, and Jordan Morris for their help writing this breakdown and their amazing work all season long. Subscribe to all 3 of the New Rockstars channels in our network. Follow me on all social platforms at Erik Voss. Follow New Rockstars. Thanks for watching. Bye.